February 2nd, 1945, 11:47 p.m., 400 feet below the surface of the North Atlantic. U-869. Oberleutnant Helmut Nuremberg sits in the commander's seat of his Type IXE/40 U-boat, listening to the hull creak under pressure that would crush a man like an empty tin can, and he knows with absolute certainty that something is wrong with their position. The dead reckoning navigation puts them approximately 60 miles off the coast of New Jersey, hunting American convoy routes in what should be the richest target area of the Atlantic. But the water depth readings don't match their charts. The currents are wrong. The underwater topography they're detecting through sonar doesn't correspond to what German naval intelligence promised them they'd find here. Either their navigation is catastrophically off, or they're not where they think they are, or the charts are wrong, or something else is happening that Nuremberg can't explain but can feel in his gut the way a submariner learns to feel when death is approaching. His radio man, Funkmat Franz Noodle, taps him on the shoulder. "Sir, we've received another transmission from headquarters. They're demanding position reports. 5th request in 3 days." They sound increasingly agitated. Nuremberg considers this. U-boat commanders are trained to minimize radio communications because every transmission is a potential death sentence. Allied direction-finding stations can triangulate U-boat positions within minutes of a broadcast, and Allied aircraft or destroyers will arrive shortly afterward with depth charges designed to crack submarine hulls like eggs. Maintaining radio silence is survival doctrine. But ignoring headquarters creates different problems. If Berlin thinks you're ignoring orders, they assume mutiny or cowardice, and post-war consequences for your family can be severe. He makes the calculation every U-boat commander dreads. Transmit and risk detection. Ignore and risk Berlin's wrath. There's no safe choice, only degrees of danger. Prepare to surface briefly at midnight. We'll transmit position report, then dive immediately. 15 seconds maximum surface time. Noodle nods and begins preparing the transmission. He's been a radio man for 3 years, long enough to know that brief transmissions aren't always brief enough. Allied listening stations are good. Very good. 15 seconds might be all they need. At 11:59 p.m., U-869 rises toward the surface, its diesel engines preparing to gulp air for the brief moment when the conning tower breaks through the waves. At precisely midnight, February 3rd, 1945, the submarine surfaces in total darkness 60 miles off the New Jersey coast, or what Nuremberg thinks is 60 miles off the New Jersey coast, except the depth readings suggest they're actually somewhere completely different. Noodle begins broadcasting. Encrypted transmission. Position report. Status update. Request for new orders. All in the compressed burst format designed to minimize transmission time. The message takes 14 seconds to send. Fast enough that Allied direction finding might not get a fix, or might get a partial fix, or might get enough information to vector destroyers toward their general area. The final 2 words of the transmission are routine acknowledgement of previous orders. Message received. Position confirmed. Continuing patrol. Heil Hitler. Except the position isn't confirmed. Nuremberg knows it isn't confirmed. But admitting navigational uncertainty in a transmission that Berlin will analyze means admitting incompetence, and incompetent U-boat commanders don't survive post-war investigations if they're captured, and their families don't survive party scrutiny if the commander dies at sea. So he lies. Position confirmed. Everything normal. Continuing patrol. Routine transmission from a routine submarine on a routine mission. U-869 dives immediately after transmission ends. 15 seconds on the surface. Back to 400 feet within 3 minutes. Standard procedure executed perfectly. Nuremberg allows himself to believe they got away clean, that the transmission was too brief for Allied triangulation, that they'll continue hunting American convoys without Allied hunters finding them first. He's wrong on every count. The transmission was intercepted by 3 Allied listening stations. The position was triangulated to within 10 square miles. And sitting in those 10 square miles, conducting anti-submarine patrol, is the USS Howard D. Crow, a destroyer escort whose crew has been hunting U-boats for 6 months and whose sonar operator has ears trained well enough to detect submarine screws at ranges that seem impossible. But none of this matters yet because Nuremberg doesn't know the destroyer is there, and the destroyer doesn't know the submarine is there. And for the next 6 hours, both vessels will maneuver through the same patch of ocean, hunting and being hunted, predator and prey, with neither certain which role they're playing. What matters right now is that U-869's transmission, intended as a routine position report, will be the last communication anyone ever receives from this submarine. No subsequent transmissions, no distress calls, no survivors picked up by Allied vessels, no wreckage found. The submarine will simply vanish from German naval records as missing, presumed lost, cause unknown, position unknown, fate unknown, and it will stay missing for 56 years. This is the story of U-869, the Nazi submarine that disappeared in the final months of World War II and wasn't found until 1991 when recreational divers discovered a wreck 230 feet down off the coast of New Jersey. A wreck that shouldn't be there because U-869's final orders sent it to patrol off Gibraltar 3,000 miles away. And nobody can explain how it ended up off New Jersey, or why it ignored orders, or what happened in the final moments before something killed all 56 men aboard and sent the submarine to the bottom, or why its last transmission from Berlin's perspective was that routine message at midnight claiming everything was fine. But we're getting ahead of the story. The mystery of U-869 doesn't begin on February 2nd, 1945. It begins 3 months earlier when the submarine departed from Kristiansand, Norway, on what should have been a routine patrol to the Eastern Atlantic, and what became instead a journey into navigational confusion, command uncertainty, and ultimate disaster that left 56 corpses sealed inside a steel tomb on the seafloor for half a century. November 1944. Kristiansand, Norway. U-869 is preparing for its first combat patrol under Nuremberg's command. The submarine is a Type IXC-40, one of Germany's larger U-boats designed for extended patrols in distant waters. It's 252 feet long, displaces 1,200 tons, carries 22 torpedoes, and has a crew of 56 men crammed into spaces barely large enough for half that number. The Type IXC-40 is a proven design that's been operating successfully since 1942. Except by November 1944, successful U-boat operations are rare because Allied anti-submarine warfare has evolved from desperate improvisation into systematic slaughter. The numbers tell the story. In 1940, U-boats were hunter kings of the Atlantic, sinking Allied shipping faster than it could be replaced, operating with near impunity. By 1944, U-boats are the hunted. Allied sonar has improved. Allied aircraft have improved. Allied convoy tactics have improved. Allied code breaking has improved. German U-boats are being sunk faster than they can be built, and the average life expectancy of a U-boat crew from the moment they depart port until the moment they're depth-charged or torpedoed is approximately 2 patrols. 50% of U-boat crews don't survive their second mission. Nuremberg knows these statistics. His crew knows these statistics. Everyone boarding U-869 in November 1944 understands they're probably going to die. The question is whether they die accomplishing something that justifies the sacrifice or die pointlessly because the war is already lost and U-boats are continuing to sail because Admiral Donitz refuses to admit defeat. The orders for U-869's first patrol are straightforward on paper. Transit from Norway to the Eastern Atlantic. Patrol the approaches to Gibraltar where Allied convoys pass from the Mediterranean into the Atlantic. Attack Allied shipping. Avoid Allied hunters. Return to base after 8 weeks or when torpedoes are expended, whichever comes first. Simple orders. Routine patrol. Except nothing about U-boat operations in late 1944 is routine anymore because Allied defenses are so sophisticated that penetrating them requires luck more than skill, and luck is something U-boats have been running out of for the past 2 years. U-869 departs Kristiansand on December 8, 1944. The submarine transits through the North Sea, passes through the gap between Scotland and Iceland, and enters the Atlantic. Standard route for U-boats heading to patrol zones in the Eastern Atlantic. The transit should take 2 weeks, putting them on station near Gibraltar by late December. They never arrive. German Naval Headquarters expects regular position reports from patrolling U-boats. Not frequent. Radio silence is survival doctrine, but regular enough to confirm the submarine is still operational and roughly on schedule. The expected transmission schedule for 869 would be 1 report upon entering the Atlantic, 1 report upon reaching patrol station, weekly reports thereafter, final report before returning to base. The first report arrives on schedule in mid-December. Position approximately 500 miles west of Ireland. Everything normal. Continuing to patrol station. The transmission is brief, encrypted, routine. The second report never arrives. German Naval Headquarters waits. U-boats sometimes delay transmissions for operational reasons. Enemy activity in the area. Mechanical problems with radio equipment. Commander's judgment that radio silence is tactically necessary. Headquarters gives you 869 a week's grace period before becoming concerned. By early January 1945, concern becomes alarm. No transmissions from you. 869 for 3 weeks. Either the submarine has been sunk without sending distress signals, or has suffered catastrophic radio failure, or for unknown reasons is ignoring orders to report position. Headquarters begins sending urgent queries. U. 869 report position immediately. No response. U. 869 acknowledge transmission. No response. The queries become increasingly threatening. U. 869 failure to report will result in severe consequences for families. No response. On January 15, 1945, Headquarters changes U. 869's orders. Instead of patrolling Gibraltar, the submarine is reassigned to American coastal waters. The reasoning is unclear from historical records. Possibly Headquarters believes the submarine's radio is damaged and it can't receive new orders, so sending new orders won't hurt. Possibly this is administrative confusion because different departments don't communicate. Possibly Headquarters has given up on U. 869 reaching Gibraltar and is reassigning it to more desperate missions because the Battle of the Atlantic is lost and throwing U-boats at American convoys is all Germany has left. The new orders are transmitted repeatedly throughout late January. U. 869 new assignment. Proceed to American coast. Patrol New York approaches. Attack targets of opportunity. The orders are encrypted, transmitted multiple times, absolutely clear. U. 869 never acknowledges these orders. No confirmation. No questions. No response. Then, on February 2, 1945, nearly 2 months after departing Norway, U. 869 finally transmits. The message is brief. Position report claiming to be 60 miles off New Jersey coast. Everything normal. Continuing patrol. Headquarters receives this transmission with confusion and relief. Confusion because the submarine should be near Gibraltar based on original orders, not off New Jersey. Relief because at least they're finally hearing from you. 869 after weeks of silence. The response from Headquarters is immediate. Confirm position. Report operational status. Why no previous communications? U. 869 never responds. That midnight transmission on February 2nd is the last anyone ever hears from the submarine. No subsequent reports. No distress calls when something goes catastrophically wrong. No survivors. No wreckage found despite Allied searches. The submarine simply vanishes. German Naval Headquarters continues transmitting queries and orders for weeks. No response. By March, they list U. 869 as missing, presumed lost. Cause unknown. Position unknown. No survivors recovered. The submarine joins the approximately 750 other U-boats lost during the war, just another entry in the ledger of German naval losses. The mystery would have ended there. Another U-boat lost to Allied anti-submarine warfare, another 56 men dead, another footnote in the Battle of the Atlantic. Except that 56 years later, in September 1991, 3 recreational divers exploring shipwrecks off the New Jersey coast discovered something that shouldn't exist. John Chatterton, Richie Kohler, and Steve Gatto were diving a known wreck site approximately 60 miles off New Jersey when they discovered a second wreck nearby that wasn't on any charts. The wreck sat upright in 230 feet of water, intact enough to recognize as a submarine. Wreck itself, which forensic analysis of recovered artifacts and detailed wreck surveys gradually revealed, and partly in the circumstances of February-March 1945, which historical research illuminated. The forensic evidence from the wreck tells a brutal story. The submarine's hull shows massive damage to the forward torpedo room. not depth charge damage. Depth charges create compression fractures and imploded sections. This was explosive damage from inside the submarine. Specifically, it appears one of U-869's own torpedoes exploded inside the torpedo room, either while being loaded into a tube or immediately after firing, when some catastrophic malfunction caused it to detonate before clearing the submarine. This type of casualty, submarine killed by its own torpedo, was rare but not unknown in World War II. Torpedo technology was complex and unreliable. German T-5 acoustic torpedoes, designed to home on propeller noise, occasionally malfunctioned and circled back toward the submarine that fired them. Earlier torpedo types had problems with depth-keeping mechanisms that caused them to run too shallow or too deep. Loading mechanisms sometimes failed, dropping torpedoes inside the submarine with sufficient impact to trigger warheads. The evidence suggests U-869 was killed by its own weapon. One of its torpedoes either malfunctioned catastrophically during loading, or was fired and immediately exploded due to mechanical failure, or circled back and struck the submarine. The explosion ripped through the forward torpedo room, killed everyone in that compartment instantly, flooded the submarine faster than watertight doors could be sealed, and sent the boat to the bottom in less than a minute. None of the crew survived long enough to send distress signals. None escaped. The submarine sank so fast that men in aft compartments probably didn't realize what was happening until water pressure crushed those compartments and killed them. Death for all 56 men came within 2 minutes of the explosion. Too fast for comprehension. Too fast for anything except terror and then nothing. But this forensic conclusion creates more questions. When did this happen? The February 2nd transmission proves U-869 was still operational at midnight on that date. Allied records show a U-boat contact in the area on February 3rd when USS Howard D. Crow detected submarine screws and conducted a depth charge attack. Did the Crow sink U-869? Or was the submarine already dead from its own torpedo, and the Crow was detecting a different submarine? Or did the Crow's depth charges damage U-869 without sinking it immediately, and the submarine limped away only to suffer the torpedo malfunction days later? The most likely reconstruction, based on available evidence, suggests this sequence. U-869 transmitted its position report at midnight February 2nd. The transmission was intercepted and triangulated by Allied listening stations. USS Howard D. Crow was vectored to the area and detected a submarine on sonar February 3rd. The Crow conducted depth charge attacks. The depth charges didn't sink U-869 but damaged it severely, possibly damaging torpedo mechanisms or destabilizing weapons in the torpedo room. U-869 limped away from the attack, tried to survive, but the damage was catastrophic, and on February 3rd or 4th, 1945, one of its own torpedoes detonated inside the submarine, killing all hands and sending the boat to the bottom exactly where recreational divers would find it 46 years later. This reconstruction explains the forensic evidence, matches the timeline, and accounts for why U-869 never transmitted distress signals. It sank too fast. But it leaves unresolved the question of how U-869 got to New Jersey in the first place. The navigational mystery has two possible explanations. First possibility, U-869 received the January 15th orders reassigning it to American waters, but never acknowledged them because Nuremberg decided radio silence was more important than confirming receipt of orders. This seems plausible except that Nuremberg's February 2nd transmission shows he was willing to break radio silence to report position, so why not acknowledge the order change earlier? Second possibility, U-869 never received the reassignment orders, continued toward Gibraltar as originally instructed, but suffered navigation errors so severe that the submarine thought it was near Gibraltar when actually it was off New Jersey. This seems implausible because navigation errors of 3,000 miles are not something that happens to competent crews, and Nuremberg's crew had training and experience that should have prevented catastrophic navigation failures. The most likely explanation combines both theories with a third factor, desperation. By February 1945, Germany is collapsing. The war is obviously lost to anyone paying attention. U-boat commanders face impossible decisions. Follow orders that send you to certain death in heavily defended areas like Gibraltar? Or reinterpret orders liberally, patrol where Allied defenses are weaker, and hope that surviving the war means post-war consequences don't matter because there won't be post-war consequences if you're dead? Nuremberg may have received the January orders, may have decided that American waters offered better survival chances than Gibraltar, may have deliberately chosen to patrol off New Jersey while reporting to headquarters that he was following orders, may have lied in his transmissions because lying to headquarters seemed less dangerous than admitting insubordination. Or he may have been genuinely confused about his position, genuinely believed he was near Gibraltar when actually he was off New Jersey, genuinely thought he was following orders when actually he was thousands of miles from where headquarters expected him. Or some combination of confusion, desperation, calculation, and bad luck may have put U-869 in American waters where it encountered USS Howard D. Crowe and suffered damage that led to its own torpedo killing everyone aboard. The final mystery is why U-869's loss remained unknown for so long. German records listed it as missing, but missing where? The February 2nd transmission suggested New Jersey, but when no wreckage was found and no survivors recovered, German analysts assumed the position report was wrong, that U-869 sank somewhere else, that American coastal waters were clean of German wrecks. Allied records showed submarine contacts and depth charge attacks in the area, but Allied captains couldn't confirm kills. Depth charges that don't bring up wreckage or oil slicks or survivors are recorded as possible submarine contact. Results unknown. The Crowe's February 3rd attack was logged as inconclusive. Maybe they sank a submarine. Maybe they attacked a false contact. No confirmation either way. So both German and Allied records treated U-869 as lost somewhere in the Atlantic, cause unknown, position unknown. The submarine became one of dozens of U-boats that simply disappeared during the war, presumed sunk, but with no confirmed location or cause. The wreck sat undiscovered on the seafloor for 46 years because it was 230 feet down, beyond the depth most recreational divers operated in the 1940s to 1980s, and because nobody was looking for U-boats off New Jersey since no U-boats were supposed to be there. Only when technical diving advanced enough to make 230-foot dives routine for experienced recreational divers did anyone discover the wreck. And only years of forensic investigation revealed its identity and reconstructed the probable sequence of events that put it there. The 56 men who died aboard U-869 remain entombed in the wreck. Maritime archaeologists and wreck divers debated whether to recover remains for proper burial or leave the submarine as a war grave. The decision was to leave it undisturbed as a memorial to the crew. The wreck is now protected under maritime law as a war grave, and diving it requires permits and respect for the dead still sealed inside. The families of the crew members learned their loved ones' fates only in the late 1990s when U-869 was definitively identified. For 50 years they believed their sons, brothers, and fathers died somewhere in the Atlantic, lost without trace. The discovery provided closure, knowing where they died, knowing they didn't suffer, knowing the submarine's final resting place. But it didn't provide easy answers to the question of why they died off New Jersey when orders sent them to Gibraltar. The story of U-869 is fundamentally a story about the fog of war, about how submarines operating alone in hostile waters make decisions based on incomplete information, about how navigation errors or deliberate insubordination or simple desperation can put people in places they shouldn't be, about how death at sea is quick and anonymous and leaves questions that remain unanswered for half a century. It's also a story about the final months of a lost war, about men ordered to continue fighting when defeat was certain, about U-boat crews sailing on missions they knew were probably suicide because orders said to sail, and refusing orders meant court-martial and shame for families. 56 men aboard U-869 went to sea in December 1944 knowing Germany was losing, knowing U-boats were being slaughtered, knowing they probably wouldn't return. They went anyway because that's what military discipline demands, what national service requires, what duty means even when duty leads to death for causes already lost. The final message from U-869, that midnight transmission claiming position off New Jersey, everything normal, continuing patrol, was routine communication that became epitaph. Everything was not normal. The submarine was damaged or about to be damaged, confused or desperate or deliberately lying about its position, hunted by Allied forces that would find it within hours. The transmission was the last moment before catastrophe, the final words before silence, the end of a story that wouldn't be fully understood for another 56 years. The discovery of U-869 in 1991 and its identification 6 years later closed one of World War II's minor mysteries. Not a major mystery like major battles or strategic decisions, but a human mystery about 56 men who vanished and where they went and what happened in their final moments. The answer turned out to be, they went to the bottom of the Atlantic off New Jersey. They died when their own torpedo exploded inside their submarine. And their final transmission was a lie or a mistake or a desperate hope that reporting normal status would somehow make everything actually be normal. The submarine still sits on the seafloor exactly where recreational divers found it. The hull is deteriorating slowly, collapsing inward as corrosion weakens the steel, but recognizable as a Type IXC/40 U-boat, identifiable from its dimensions and configuration, marked by the artifacts recovered during identification efforts. Divers still visit occasionally, though regulations restrict access and require permits. The wreck is a time capsule from February 1945, preserving the moment when 56 men died in an instant, sealed forever in a steel tomb that took half a century to find. The lesson, if there is one, is about the permanence of questions and the difficulty of answers. U-869 vanished in February 1945. It was found in September 1991. It was identified in 1997. Its story was reconstructed through forensic analysis, historical research, and detective work that took years. And still questions remain. Did Nuremberg know where he was? Did he receive the reassignment orders? Why didn't he acknowledge them? What exactly happened in the final moments before the torpedo exploded? Did the crew realize they were dying, or did death come too fast for comprehension? These questions will never be fully answered because the only witnesses are sealed inside a corroding wreck 230 feet underwater, and they've been dead for 80 years, and submarines don't give up their secrets easily, even when found. The Nazi submarine that vanished sent its final message from the depths at midnight on February 2, 1945, claiming everything was fine when everything was about to go catastrophically wrong. That message was received by German Naval Headquarters, logged, archived, forgotten. It was also received by Allied listening stations, triangulated, acted upon, which led to depth charge attacks that damaged U-869 and contributed to its destruction. The real final message from U-869 came 56 years later when divers found the wreck and forensic analysis revealed what happened. That message says, war is chaos, submarines disappear, men die in instants without understanding why, questions outlast answers, and sometimes the only way to solve mysteries is to dive 230 feet down and look at the wreckage directly, because records and theories and histories can only tell you what people thought happened, while forensic evidence tells you what actually happened. U-869's final message from the depths wasn't the radio transmission at midnight. It was the wreck itself, speaking through damage patterns and artifact locations and the silent testimony of steel that failed and men who died. That message took half a century to deliver, but it finally reached the surface when divers brought up a knife with a name on it and started asking questions that led to answers that explained how a German U-boat ended up off New Jersey in February 1945 when it should have been near Gibraltar, how 56 men died in an instant from their own torpedo, and how a submarine can vanish so completely that finding it requires recreational divers stumbling across it decades later because nobody was looking in the right place because nobody knew the right place to look. That's the story of U-869, the Nazi submarine that vanished, that sent its final message from the depths, and that waited 56 years on the seafloor before anyone found it and understood what that final message meant.